Beyond the silence, a guardian's journey. Have you ever wondered what secrets lie behind a dog's eyes when they've witnessed the darkest side of humanity? What would they tell us if they could speak of betrayal, of pain inflicted by those meant to protect? In the dim fluorescent lighting of Pinewood County Animal Shelter, a German shepherd pressed himself against cold concrete, amber eyes reflecting not just fear, but a silent knowledge that would eventually bring an entire criminal network crashing down. His body trembled not from cold, but from the weight of secrets no animal should have to carry. Secrets that would soon expose a corruption so deep it had been hiding in plain sight for years. The blow that struck Shadow's muzzle would be the last the world would ignore. Pinewood County Animal Shelter represented everything that happens when compassion takes a backseat to bureaucracy. Budget slashes had reduced staff to a bare minimum, with too few hands caring for too many abandoned souls. The building itself seemed to sigh with neglect. Peeling paint, flickering lights, and the perpetual scent of industrial disinfectant that failed to mask the underlying notes of desperation and surrender. In the last kennel of the dog wing, farthest from the public viewing area, the German shepherd had been huddled since his arrival 3 days earlier. According to his intake form, he'd been found wandering along Route 16, collarless and unchipped. The name Shadow had been hastily assigned, fitting for a dog who seemed determined to disappear into corners and avoid human contact. Shadow's behavior told a story without words. He flinched when someone raised a hand, cowered when voices grew stern, and his eyes, intelligent amber eyes, constantly darted toward exits as if calculating escape routes. His ribs showed through his dull coat, and a small patch of fur was missing from his shoulder, revealing slightly puckered skin beneath. Olivia Parker, the shelter's volunteer coordinator, had recognized the signs immediately. With 15 years of animal welfare experience, she could read trauma in an animal's body language as clearly as others read text. "He's been through something terrible," she told Victor Blackwell, the overworked shelter manager. "We need to handle him with extraordinary care." On Shadow's kennel card, she'd written specific instructions. "Approach slowly. Speak softly. No sudden movements. Give plenty of space. Likely abuse case." But on this Tuesday morning, Olivia had called in sick with a severe migraine, and the shelter was operating with just 3 staff members instead of the already insufficient 5. Victor had assigned kennel cleaning to their newest hire, Derek Wilson, a man whose resume suggested experience but whose demeanor had already raised concerns among the regular volunteers. The morning progressed poorly for Derek. A cat had scratched his arm during medication administration. The washing machine had overflowed, requiring an hour of cleanup. And the coffee maker, the staff's lifeline through difficult shifts, had chosen today to stop working. By the time he reached Shadow's kennel, Derek's patience had worn thinner than the shelter's budget. "Come on, move!" Derek snapped, trying to guide the German shepherd to one side so he could clean the other. Shadow froze, his body becoming rigid, amber eyes widening. When Derek reached for his collar, the dog retreated further into the corner, making himself as small as possible. What happened next took only seconds, but would alter countless lives. Derek's frustration peaked. With a muttered curse, he raised his hand and struck Shadow across the muzzle. "I said move!" The security camera mounted in the corner captured everything. The blow, Shadow's yelp of pain and fear, the way he pressed himself against the wall afterward, trembling so violently his nails clicked against the concrete floor. His eyes reflected something beyond fear, a betrayal of the most fundamental trust between human and animal. Derek finished cleaning hurriedly, sloshing dirty water onto the floor in his haste. As he left, distracted by his ringing phone, he failed to properly secure the kennel latch. A small oversight that would catalyze extraordinary consequences. 30 minutes later, Maya Chen arrived for her volunteer shift. The 24-year-old veterinary student had requested to work specifically with Shadow after reading his intake notes. Her backpack contained high-value treats, a gentle slip lead, and a book. She'd found that reading aloud in a soft voice sometimes helped traumatized animals adjust to human presence without the pressure of direct interaction. As Maya approached the dog wing, an unusual silence made her pause. Most mornings, at least a few dogs would bark at the sound of footsteps. Today, nothing. Her pace quickened as unease crept up her spine. Shadow's kennel was empty. "Victor!" she called, trying to keep the alarm from her voice. Shadow's not in his kennel. A facility-wide search commenced immediately. Staff checked every room, closet, and possible hiding place. Victor reviewed the morning's security footage to determine how and when the German Shepherd had escaped his enclosure. The video revealed everything: Derek's impatience, the striking of Shadow, and the improperly secured door. It also showed what happened after Derek left. Shadow had remained frozen for nearly 20 minutes before carefully nudging the loose door with his nose. When it swung open, he'd slipped out, keeping his body low to the ground, navigating the hallway with the stealth of one accustomed to moving undetected. But where had he gone? Further footage showed him avoiding the main areas, instead finding his way to a rarely used supply closet where he'd wedged himself behind stacks of towels and blankets. That's where Maya eventually found him, a dark shape nearly invisible among the shadows, trembling so severely that the nearby shelving vibrated slightly. His eyes, when they briefly met hers, held such profound fear that Maya felt tears spring to her own. What she did next would not only change Shadow's life, but would ultimately expose a disturbing pattern that had gone unnoticed for far too long. Maya didn't approach directly. Instead, she lowered herself to sit cross-legged on the floor several feet away, her back against the wall. She didn't look directly at Shadow, didn't reach toward him, didn't even speak immediately. She simply existed in the same space, making herself smaller, less threatening. After 15 minutes of shared silence, Maya began to read aloud from her phone, not addressing Shadow but simply filling the air with the gentle rhythm of a human voice, without demands or expectations. She'd learned this technique during a seminar on rehabilitating traumatized animals, the importance of presence without pressure. "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step," she read softly. "But the journey of healing begins with a moment of safety." An hour passed in this tableau. The trembling dog hiding among donated blankets, the young woman reading philosophical quotes and poetry, neither encroaching on the other's space. The only noticeable change was the gradual slowing of Shadow's trembling, and occasionally the briefest flicker of his gaze toward Maya before quickly darting away. When Victor found them, his initial irritation at not being immediately informed of Shadow's discovery melted away as he observed the scene. Maya held up a hand to silence him before he could speak, then pointed to Shadow, who had, almost imperceptibly, shifted his weight to inch slightly closer to where she sat. "How did he get out?" Victor whispered, crouching down at a distance. "I don't know," Maya replied quietly. "But something terrified him. He's more shut down than yesterday." Victor sighed. "Let's check the security footage. Can you stay with him while we figure out how to safely get him back to a secure area?" What the security cameras revealed left Victor ashen-faced. The footage clearly showed Derek striking Shadow, followed by his carelessness with the kennel door. More disturbing was what further review uncovered. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over the past month, Derek had been documented being rough with several animals, though this was the first time he'd struck one. Victor immediately suspended Derek pending investigation and called Olivia, despite her illness. "We have a situation," he explained, his voice tight. and we need your expertise with Shadow. He seems to trust Maya somewhat, but we need to move him from the supply closet." By evening, they had successfully coaxed Shadow into a quiet office, converted to temporary housing. Maya had volunteered to stay late, continuing her gentle reading, while maintaining a respectful distance as the German Shepherd gradually adjusted to the new space. "What happens now?" Maya asked when Olivia arrived, clearly unwell but determined to help. "We document everything," Olivia replied grimly. "And we need to check all the animals Derek has handled for signs of mistreatment." She hesitated before adding, "But there's something else you should know about Shadow." Olivia pulled up his intake photos on her tablet. "Notice anything?" Maya studied the images, then looked at Shadow across the room. "The markings around his eyes and muzzle, they're different." Olivia nodded. "Based on these distinctive markings and a small scar visible on his right flank in the intake photos, I believe this isn't a stray at all." "I think this is Atlas, a police 9 who disappeared during a training exercise 2 months ago." Maya's eyes widened. "A police dog? But why didn't they find his microchip when they scanned him?" "That's what worries me," Olivia said, lowering her voice. "According to intake notes, the scanner didn't detect anything. Either his microchip migrated or Maya let the implication hang between them, or someone deliberately removed it," Olivia finished, the gravity of such a possibility settling heavily in the small room. Neither woman could have predicted how this discovery would connect to a larger web of corruption that had been festering within the county's animal control system, or how a traumatized German Shepherd would become the key to unraveling it all. Officer Nathan Cole had spent every off-duty moment of the past 8 weeks searching for his missing partner. Atlas had vanished during a rural training exercise, disappearing into dense woodland without a trace. The official report suggested the German Shepherd had likely fallen victim to coyotes or suffered an accident in the rough terrain, but Nathan rejected these conclusions vehemently. "He's too well trained to just wander off," Nathan had insisted to his superiors repeatedly, "and we would have found remains if he'd been attacked." When Nathan received Olivia's call, he broke every speed limit, driving to the shelter. The security cameras captured the moment he entered the office where Shadow, potentially his Atlas, was being kept. The German Shepherd's reaction was instantaneous and unmistakable. Despite his traumatized state, his ears suddenly pricked forward. His body tensed. And then, in a moment that brought tears to those watching, he raced across the room and pressed himself against Nathan's legs, whining with a sound somewhere between pain and desperate relief. "Hey, buddy," Nathan whispered, kneeling to gently embrace the dog who trembled against him, a contradictory display of joy at the reunion and lingering fear from his recent experiences. "I'd been looking everywhere for you." The physical examination that followed raised disturbing questions. A veterinarian confirmed that Atlas's microchip had been surgically removed. A small, partially healed incision was discovered when they shaved the fur from his shoulder. He had lost nearly 15 pounds, and in addition to the new psychological trauma, showed evidence of having been kept in confined quarters for extended periods. This wasn't a case of a lost dog being picked up by animal control, Olivia explained as they reviewed the findings. Someone took him deliberately, removed his chip, and kept him somewhere before he either escaped or was abandoned near the highway where he was found. The implications were serious enough to warrant opening an official investigation. Atlas's status as a police 9 meant his theft and mistreatment constituted a federal offense. Within hours, the local police department and the FBI had begun gathering evidence, including the security footage of Derek striking Atlas. When questioned, Derek claimed no knowledge of Atlas's origins beyond finding him as a stray. However, his phone records told a different story, revealing communications with individuals suspected of involvement in dog-fighting rings across the state. While Atlas showed no evidence of having been forced to fight, investigators theorized he might have been intended for breeding or training other dogs due to his exceptional temperament and abilities. Throughout the initial investigation, Maya remained at the shelter, helping with the documentation and care of other animals potentially mistreated by Derek. One evening, as she prepared to leave, she found Victor reviewing additional security footage with a federal agent. "There's something odd here," Victor was saying, replaying a sequence from 2 nights before Atlas was officially found as a stray. The grainy footage showed a shelter vehicle returning after hours, with Derek and another figure unloading what appeared to be a sedated German Shepherd. He didn't find Atlas as a stray, Maya realized. He brought him in himself and created a false intake story. The FBI agent nodded grimly. "And we need to figure out why. If they went to the trouble of removing his microchip and then bringing him to a shelter rather than simply abandoning him somewhere, they had a specific purpose." As the investigation expanded, so did the evidence of a larger conspiracy. Atlas had not been the only missing dog with specialized training to disappear in recent months. Nor was Pinewood County Shelter the only facility where documentation had been falsified. A pattern emerged of valuable working dogs being stolen, their identities obscured, and then processed through shelters with the help of insiders like Derek. The question remaining was why? A question Atlas himself would ultimately help answer in a way no one expected. 2 weeks after his reunion with Nathan, Atlas began the process of rehabilitation. The psychological impact of his ordeal had left scars deeper than his physical injuries. He showed signs of anxiety in enclosed spaces and would panic if separated from Nathan, suggesting he had experienced prolonged confinement and isolation. "It's common with trauma cases," explained Dr. Amelia Patel, the veterinary behaviorist working with Atlas. "But his strong foundation of training and the secure bond he has with Officer Cole give him advantages many traumatized animals don't have." Nathan had taken leave from active duty to focus on Atlas's recovery, converting his garage into a comfortable space where the German Shepherd could decompress without feeling trapped. Maya visited regularly, having formed a connection with Atlas during those crucial hours in the shelter. During one such visit, Maya noticed Atlas's unusual reaction when she set down her backpack, which contained textbooks from her veterinary classes. The German Shepherd became alert, focusing intently on the bag, his nostrils flaring. "What is it, boy?" Nathan asked, recognizing his partner's alert posture. The same one Atlas would assume when detecting narcotics during his police work. Maya carefully opened her backpack. "I have my pharmacology textbook and notes. We're studying different drug classifications this semester." Nathan's expression changed. The narcotics unit had been investigating a new synthetic drug being distributed locally. "Atlas and I assisted on several searches before he disappeared." This observation led to a carefully orchestrated test. Under controlled conditions, Atlas was presented with various scents, including samples from the pharmacology lab. His response was definitive. He alerted strongly to compounds similar to those used in manufacturing the synthetic drug. "They took him because of what he knows," Nathan realized. Someone discovered Atlas could detect their product and saw him as a threat to their operation. The FBI incorporated this information into their expanding investigation, now focused on connections between the dog theft ring and drug manufacturing operations. The breakthrough came when analyzing the soil samples taken from Atlas's paws and fur at intake, which contained chemical traces consistent with drug production, along with distinct mineral markers that helped narrow the search area. Meanwhile, conditions at Pinewood Shelter underwent rapid change. The investigation revealed multiple violations, leading to county commissioners approving emergency funding for staff training and facility improvements. Olivia, promoted to interim director after Victor resigned amid questions about his oversight failures, implemented new protocols for animal care and security. Maya found herself offered a paid position coordinating volunteer training, her experience with Atlas having demonstrated her exceptional ability to work with traumatized animals. The shelter transformed into a model facility, with community support pouring in as the story of Atlas's mistreatment and the subsequent investigation made local headline. 4 months after Atlas had been found, the FBI executed coordinated raids on multiple properties identified through the investigation. They discovered not only drug manufacturing operations, but also several missing dogs, including 2 other former police nines who, like Atlas, had been stolen because of their ability to detect certain chemicals. The raids also uncovered evidence implicating a network of corrupt officials who had been protecting the operation, including, most shockingly, a high-ranking member of the county government who oversaw animal control funding. Through it all, Atlas continued his recovery, gradually returning to his confident self. Nathan documented this journey, sharing updates that inspired the community and brought attention to issues of animal welfare and the special needs of traumatized pets. What had begun with an act of cruelty captured on camera had expanded into a movement that would ultimately save countless animal lives. And the German Shepherd, who had cowered in fear after being struck by an impatient caretaker, would soon return to service, though in a capacity no one had initially imagined. "Are you sure about this?" Dr. Patel asked, watching Atlas move confidently through the training course. "He's made remarkable progress, but returning to full police duty involves significant stress." Nathan nodded, though his expression revealed mixed emotions. Atlas's recovery has exceeded everyone's expectations. "But you're right. I don't think traditional nine work is the right fit for him anymore." 6 months had passed since Atlas's rescue from the shelter. The criminal case against Derek and his associates had expanded to include charges ranging from animal cruelty to drug trafficking and corruption. Throughout the legal proceedings, Atlas had remained a symbol of resilience, his story inspiring changes in how law enforcement approached animal welfare cases. Now, as autumn painted the training facilities surrounding trees in gold and crimson, Nathan and Atlas were pioneering something new. With support from the police department and grant funding secured through Maya's advocacy, they were developing a specialized program for Atlas to serve as a rehabilitation partner for traumatized animals being processed as evidence in abuse cases. "He understands them in a way humans can't," Nathan explained, watching Atlas gently approach a recently rescued terrier that had been cowering in its enclosure for days, refusing food or human contact. "He's been where they are." Maya, now completing her veterinary studies while working part-time at the reformed Pinewood shelter, had documented remarkable results. Animals paired with Atlas showed faster stress reduction, improved social behaviors, and greater responsiveness to rehabilitation techniques. His presence seemed to communicate a message that humans couldn't convey. "You are safe now. I understand." It gets better. Today's session was particularly significant. The terrier had been rescued from one of the properties raided as part of the investigation Atlas had helped spark. Like many animals recovered from abuse situations, it exhibited extreme fear responses that made medical treatment and basic care challenging. Atlas approached with the careful body language he had developed for these interactions. Head slightly lowered, movements slow and deliberate, maintaining a respectful distance while communicating peaceful intentions. The terrier, which had growled and retreated from all human approaches, watched Atlas with cautious interest. After several minutes of this delicate dance, Atlas lay down a few feet from the terrier's enclosure, positioning himself so the smaller dog could observe him without feeling threatened. Nathan and Maya remained further back, documenting the interaction but not interfering. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the terrier's posture shifted from defensive to curious. By session's end, it had moved slightly closer to the front of its enclosure, and for the first time since rescue, accepted food in the presence of observers. "That's the 4th success this week," Maya noted, updating her records. The prosecution team is calling Atlas's evidence transformative in building their animal welfare cases. The before and after documentation is helping judges understand the psychological impact of abuse in ways written reports never could. The program expanded beyond initial expectations. What had begun as rehabilitation for Atlas evolved into a pioneering approach to animal welfare in legal context. Other departments sent representatives to learn the techniques, with plans to implement similar programs using recovered nines who might not return to traditional police work. "There's something else," Nathan said as they walked Atlas back to the transport vehicle. The department's Community Outreach Division wants Atlas to become the face of a new education program about animal welfare and reporting suspected abuse. They believe his story helps people connect emotionally with the issue. Maya smiled, from victim to advocate. It's perfect. What neither of them discussed, though both understood, was how Atlas's journey had transformed their own lives as well. Nathan had discovered a new purpose beyond traditional police work, becoming a sought-after expert in animal welfare as it intersected with law enforcement. Maya had found her veterinary career path, focusing on forensic medicine and trauma recovery, with multiple job offers already extended for after her graduation. As they drove away from the training facility, Atlas sat alertly in his specialized compartment, watching the world pass by through the window. A far cry from the terrified dog who had hidden behind blankets in a shelter supply closet. His journey from victim to healing presence for others embodied the program's core message. Trauma need not be the end of the story. The courtroom fell silent as Atlas entered with Nathan. Despite months of preparation, there had been concern about how the German Shepherd would respond to the formal environment and the presence of individuals associated with his trauma. But Atlas walked confidently beside his handler, his rehabilitation complete in ways that once seemed impossible. This hearing represented the culmination of a sprawling investigation that had uncovered corruption extending from local animal control to state-level regulatory agencies. Derek Wilson, the caretaker whose abuse had been captured on security footage, was merely one node in a network that had exploited shelter systems to conceal criminal activities, ranging from drug manufacturing to organized theft of specialized working dogs. Atlas's presence today served multiple purposes. Beyond his symbolic importance to the case, he was demonstrating the pioneering court support dog protocol that Nathan and Maya had developed with legal and behavioral experts. This approach was being considered for implementation in animal welfare cases nationwide, allowing recovered animals to be present during proceedings without causing undue stress to the animals or disruption to court function. As Atlas settled on his designated mat near the witness stand, the judge addressed the assembly. "I want to acknowledge the unusual nature of today's proceedings. The presence of this particular service animal has been approved due to his unique connection to this case and the precedent it may establish for future animal welfare prosecutions." Maya, seated in the gallery, felt a swell of pride as Atlas maintained his composed demeanor. She thought back to their first meeting in that shelter supply closet, the terrified dog hiding behind blankets, too traumatized to make eye contact. His transformation was more than a personal victory. It represented the potential for healing that existed in even the most damaged victims. The prosecution presented evidence systematically, including the security footage that had started the investigation. When the video of Derek striking Atlas played on the courtroom monitors, the German Shepherd's ears flicked toward the sound, but he remained calm, grounded by Nathan's reassuring presence and the extensive desensitization training they had undertaken. Expert witnesses explained how the investigation had expanded from that single incident to uncover an operation that had used shelters as processing points for stolen animals, particularly those with specialized training that made them valuable or threatening to criminal enterprises. Veterinary forensic specialists detailed how Atlas's medical examination had provided critical evidence, from the surgically removed microchip to the chemical traces that had led investigators to drug manufacturing locations. When Nathan took the stand, Atlas maintained his position nearby, a living testament to both the trauma inflicted and the healing possible through proper intervention. Nathan detailed Atlas's original training, disappearance, and the remarkable reunion at the shelter, his testimony punctuated by occasional glances at his partner. "In your professional opinion," the prosecutor asked, "what would have happened to Atlas had the abuse not been captured on security footage?" Nathan considered the question carefully. Based on the pattern established by the investigation, Atlas would likely have been processed through the shelter system under his false identity, then transferred to another facility or adopted out through channels controlled by the network. His valuable training would have been exploited, or if deemed too risky due to his ability to detect their drug manufacturing, he might have been eliminated. The implications hung heavily in the courtroom. How many other animals had been processed through similar channels before the scheme was uncovered? How many working dogs had disappeared without the determination that had driven Atlas's case forward? As the hearing concluded for the day, reporters gathered outside, eager to capture images of the German Shepherd whose abuse had triggered the investigation. Instead of exploiting this interest, Nathan and Maya had worked with the prosecutor's office to develop an educational approach, using media attention to highlight broader issues of animal welfare and community reporting of suspected abuse. Atlas's story resonates because people see his journey from victim to advocate, Maya explained to a journalist as they left the courthouse. But the larger message is about the systems that failed before he was rescued, and how community vigilance is essential to preventing similar cases. What no one could have anticipated was how Atlas's case would catalyze legislative change. As lawmakers began drafting enhanced protections for working animals and stronger oversight of shelter operations, it became clear that from a single act of cruelty captured on camera had grown a movement with implications beyond any individual animal's story. 2 years to the day after Atlas's rescue from Pinewood County shelter, a ribbon-cutting ceremony marked the opening of the Atlas Legacy Center for Animal Rehabilitation and Training. The facility, built on repurposed county land with a combination of government funding and private donations, represented the tangible outcome of the case that had transformed animal welfare practices across the state. Atlas, now 9 years old and fully recovered from his ordeal, sat attentively beside Nathan as officials made their remarks. His graying muzzle and the small patches of white fur around his eyes gave him a distinguished appearance, complementing the specialized therapy dog vest he wore in his role as the center's canine ambassador. Maya, who had completed her veterinary degree and now served as the center's medical director, watched from nearby, remembering the frightened dog she had found hiding in a supply closet. The contrast between that traumatized animal and the confident, balanced German Shepherd before her never ceased to amaze her. It served as a rehabilitation facility for animals recovered from abuse situations, a training center for law enforcement and animal control officers, and an educational resource for the community. Most innovatively, it housed the working dog recovery program that Atlas had inspired, a specialized approach to rehabilitating service and working dogs who had experienced trauma or required retraining for new roles. After the ceremony, visitors toured the facility, learning about the programs that had grown from Atlas's case. In the rehabilitation wing, rescued animals received specialized care designed to address both physical and psychological trauma. The training center provided certification courses for animal welfare professionals, emphasizing evidence-based approaches to investigating abuse and supporting recovery. At the heart of it all was the bond between handler and animal exemplified by Nathan and Atlas. Their partnership had evolved from traditional police work to pioneering new territory in animal-assisted rehabilitation. Together, they had worked with dozens of traumatized animals, helping them reconnect with humans and, when possible, return to service in modified roles suited to their experiences. As the day's formal activities concluded, Nathan and Maya found a quiet moment away from the crowds, watching Atlas demonstrate calming signals to a recently rescued border collie in one of the rehabilitation yards. "Remember when we thought success would be just getting him back on police duty?" Nathan said, smiling as Atlas gently encouraged the more timid dog to explore a training obstacle. Maya nodded. He found a different purpose, maybe the one he was always meant for. The investigation sparked by Atlas's case had led to significant convictions, with Derek Wilson and several higher-level operators receiving substantial sentences. More importantly, it had exposed systemic vulnerabilities that had allowed the exploitation of shelters and working animals. The resulting reforms included enhanced security protocols, better training for shelter staff, and specialized tracking systems for working dogs. The deeper meaning, what Atlas taught us, Atlas would never know the full impact of his story. How a moment of cruelty captured on camera had unleashed a chain of events that transformed an entire system. But his journey illuminated profound truths about resilience, healing, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. First, Atlas's story reminds us that trauma, while devastating, doesn't have to be defining. His journey from a cowering, broken spirit to a confident, healing presence demonstrated that with proper support, patience, and understanding, recovery is possible even from the most profound betrayal. This principle applies not just to animals but to humans as well. The path to healing isn't linear or predictable, but with consistent compassion, progress becomes possible. Second, his experience highlights how vulnerability and strength can coexist. Atlas's greatest impact came not despite his trauma, but because of it. His ability to connect with other traumatized animals stemmed directly from his own experiences. In human terms, this reflects how our own wounds, when properly processed, can become the source of our deepest empathy and most meaningful contributions to others. Third, Atlas's story demonstrates the power of bearing witness. If Maya hadn't found him hiding among those shelter blankets, if Nathan hadn't persisted in searching for his partner, if Olivia hadn't recognized the discrepancies in his intake photos, the larger conspiracy might never have been uncovered. This speaks to the importance of truly seeing those who suffer and taking action rather than looking away from uncomfortable truths. Fourth, the systematic changes that followed Atlas's case illustrate how individual stories can catalyze collective transformation. One dog's experience, when properly documented and shared, led to policy reforms, new facilities, enhanced training protocols, and ultimately better protection for countless other animals. This reminds us that addressing systemic problems often begins with paying attention to a single case that illuminates larger patterns. Finally, Atlas's journey from victim to healer embodies the principle that purpose can emerge from pain. What happened to him was unquestionably wrong, but the meaning created in the aftermath, the animals helped, the humans educated, the systems improved, demonstrates how even the darkest experiences can ultimately contribute to a more compassionate world. These lessons extend far beyond animal welfare. They touch on how we respond to trauma in all its forms, how we design systems to protect the vulnerable, how we transform suffering into meaningful action, and ultimately, how we recognize the profound intelligence and emotional capacity of the found intelligence and emotional capacity. Animals with whom we share our world. As Dr. Patel observed after 2 years of documenting Atlas's work with other traumatized animals, what's most remarkable isn't just that Atlas recovered, but that he seems to intuitively understand what each animal needs to feel safe again. It's as if he's saying to them, I know, I've been there too, and look at me now. That's something no human, no matter how skilled, can communicate with the same authenticity. Perhaps the most profound lesson of all is that sometimes the deepest healing comes through connection with those who truly understand because they have walked a similar path. As Atlas guided another traumatized animal toward recovery, his very presence communicated a truth more powerful than words. That trauma need not be the end of the story, that fear can be overcome, and that purpose can be found even after profound betrayal. As the German shepherd who once cowered in terror now stood as a living embodiment of resilience, his legacy would continue in the lives of each animal he helped, each professional he trained, and each system he helped transform. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful advocates for change are those who have themselves experienced the very conditions they help others overcome. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed the remarkable resilience of an animal who overcame trauma? Or perhaps you've experienced how a special animal changed your own perspective on healing. Your stories help build a community of understanding around animal welfare. Remember that everyone can play a role in preventing animal cruelty by staying vigilant and reporting suspicious situations. One observation, like Maya's discovery of Atlas hiding in that supply closet, can be the first step in exposing larger patterns of abuse and creating meaningful change. Thank you for joining us on Atlas's journey from victim to healer. By sharing these stories, we honor the silent resilience of animals who cannot speak for themselves, but have so much to teach us about courage, recovery, and the extraordinary capacity for renewal that exists in all living beings.